Okay, so the quality attributes that I had you use in the exercise are, we use them because they're the ones in the book. Are they the most important quality attributes on the planet? No. They just happen to be good quality attributes to discuss because they're fairly common, and they help us to bring out points about people using the same word to mean different things, non-operational quality attribute requirements, the idea of concrete scenarios and general scenarios. But again, you're going to see an awful lot of quality attributes names when you work with your stakeholders. My worst case was the 125 quality attributes. But chances are you'll see a couple from that are in this book, and chances are you are also going to see some that are not in this book, and therefore you do not have any general scenarios for. But one way or the other, when your stakeholders are there, your job is to come up with concrete scenarios. If you have general scenarios to help you, by all means use them. If you don't, well, you're still stuck with the job of coming up with concrete scenarios. Yeah.
So I thought maybe inappropriately that you were supposed to get down to 3 to 5. In other words, even if they gave you 150 or whatever,
yeah,
your key is to help them generate the priority listing somehow that you can get within a range of a minimum set.
Yeah.
If you can. I mean.
Well, so we throw that number 3 to 5 around, and this is not to disagree with Rick or anything, but I don't know where that number comes from.
Okay.
The truth of the matter is, it's not going to be 125. But on the other hand, is it going to be 3, 4, 5, 11? I don't know. Human beings can't keep more than 5 or 6 or 7 things in their head at one time. And chances are, for any system you come across, there's not going to be 50 things driving the structure of the architecture. There's going to be a handful of things. Okay, so for example, using the ATM machine, what are the key quality attributes that you think are going to be driving the structure of the architecture?
Availability.
Availability is going to be a big one. What else? Security is going to be a big one. What else?
Usability.
Usability is going to be a big one. So you look for that handful of things, and when you feel confident that you have the handful of things, then you can begin to, and you understand that handful of things, then you can start designing your architecture. But guaranteed, when you start designing your architecture, you're going to discover qualities that you thought were architecturally significant that turn out to not be architecturally significant. You're going to find qualities that were not you did not think were architecturally significant that turn out to be architecturally significant. You're going to find requirements that you don't understand, requirements that conflict with each other, requirements that are impossible to achieve, whatever. But the point is, you take your best shot at figuring out what that handful is and understanding that handful, and then start designing your architecture and deal with what happens. Yes?
A really key way to look at it is to say that, I mean, the times that I've been in a room with stakeholders, and they say, these are the quality attributes we're interested in. Sometimes it takes a while, but what you really want to do is you want to press them and to say, okay, what makes this, if we don't give you X, or if we don't give you this set of X, what makes this system a failure? You know, if you don't have performance such that it doesn't respond in 10 seconds, is this system a failure, or is it just not quite as good? And once you start putting it in those terms, then you can start to establish a kind of a range of the things that are most important, things that are very important but we can live without being perfect, and things that are mostly nice to haves. Because there's a lot of people who will say, I really, really want to be secure, but when you start pushing on security and say, well, I also want to access it from my phone, I want to access it from the web, and then you start telling them what that means, and they're like, why don't we just go with the standards kind of a thing. So typically, you know, depending on the project, obviously, but it will come down to somewhere between 3 and 7 really, really important things, and then there'll be like, you know, 5 to 10 things that they really want, but it doesn't cause it to be a failure.
Good, that's good advice. The other thing, too, is that you keep in mind that not all stakeholders are created equal either. And just because one failure to achieve one quality attribute is a failure of the system to one stakeholder does not necessarily make it a failure of the system to another stakeholder. Yeah.
That plays into, I'm just thinking about ours and the fact that we were in essence, we were discussing up there 3 different systems within what we call the DFIB. Mm-hmm. Okay? And what would be critical attributes for one element might not be for the next. And again, this, when you mentioned your 125, I said, if you start looking at all the things that are really involved in this system of systems, I can see where it could build. And you'd have to parse out which are important from which elements, blah, blah, blah.
Yep. One more question. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to go in gadfly mode here for just a minute. And I want to actually address this to the systems engineers in here. Why is it not appropriate for the prioritization or for the attempted prioritization of the ilities, to be done as part of a trade study, so that when it gets to the architect has a much better
You're saying when it comes to identifying the key quality attributes, why not do that as a trade study?
I think. Why didn't I say that? Yeah.
So actually, you learned this in the second course, but there's a whole bunch of different ways to figure out what that handful of requirements are. Let's name a couple just for the sake. What would be if I'm the architect on a project and I need to identify what that handful of key quality attributes are. Give me some possibilities. How do I figure it out?
I think a trade study is one.
Trade study is one way. What's another way?
Get your stakeholders in a room.
Get your stakeholders in a room. That's another way. What's another way?
Magic 8 ball.
That could work, I guess. What else?
You get experts in the field.
Bring in experts. What's another way?
Look at previous systems.
Look at similar systems. Read case studies about similar systems. Go out there and look up on the internet taxonomies of quality attributes and just start looking through them and checking them off, and maybe that will help you. So if you're the architect and you need to find that handful of things, well, another way I didn't even mention, personal experience is another one. So there's a whole bunch of ways to help you identify that handful of things, especially if you totally don't know. The good ways to do it are trade studies, similar systems, and so forth.